And I tend to, Jesus said, go and make disciples, teaching them everything that I have commanded you. And we have come to believe that what that means, a disciple is a learner. That's you. So sometimes some people, go to church and they're looking for comfort. And that's okay. You can probably find comfort at church. Some people are looking for friendship, and I certainly hope that you guys find lots of friendships. And there's lots of different reasons to go to church, and there are plenty of churches out there that will aim their service, what they do, towards comfort, or towards entertainment even, or towards those kind of things. And I'm not trying to criticize other churches. I'm just trying to say that that's not what we do here. What we're trying to do here is make you into disciples. So, because I've had people come up to me and go, boy, I feel like I was in a seminary class. And I'm going, good. That's exactly what I want, because you're a disciple. A disciple is a learner, and I'm going to teach you what the Lord has taught me. And because we want to make disciples and teach you all that the Lord has commanded, we'd like to go through the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse, usually. Now, sometimes we do mini-series, like on the 26th, I'm doing a really cool series called How to Live Right Every Day. It's really exciting, and you should come to it. You should invite your friends to it. It's going to be a big deal. But in the meantime, we're going through the book of Genesis, and here we are. We got through Genesis 1, the Lord creates everything. Genesis 2, we talk about the creation of people, and then we get to Genesis 3, and it's about, this terrible story about the fall. In Genesis 4, boy, it's exciting, murder and all kinds of great things. Cain wipes out Abel, and we talk about that. Then we get to Genesis 5. So-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so. And everybody who reads this goes, okay, let's skim this and jump to chapter 6, where it gets exciting again. Now, wait a minute. If we believe that God's word comes from God, it's a communication from God, then there are no accidents. There's a reason that this is there. And we're actually going to go through it today, and you're going, oh, great, it's boring. I need another donut. Okay, well, if you need one, go get one. But here, I assure you, there's some good stuff in Genesis 5. So I got to thinking about it for a minute. I said, how do I get across to them why this is so important? So I was reading that in 2012, the Barna Group, the Barna Research Group, and the American Bible Society, they did a survey to find out about Bible reading in America. And here's what they discovered. 85% of households in the United States have at least one Bible. That's the good news. In fact, the average is 4.3 Bibles per house. They got a lot of Bibles. The American people are very familiar with it. However, 70% of them have never cracked the cover. Yeah. Now, 69% actually believe the Bible provides answers, but they've never read it. They believe that, but they've never opened it up. That's like going, I've got the answers. Have you read it? No. Let's have a parade. It's crazy. In fact, they went through it a little more, and they found out that 36%, that's 4 out of 10 people, read the Bible, I love this, less than once a year. What does that mean? That means 0. They don't read it at all. Okay, at all. Now, 80% say they know what's in there. They're knowledgeable about it. Yet of those 80%, 60% of those couldn't even name the first book of the Bible. It's Genesis, by the way. What is this telling us? It's telling us that there's a problem. Most people in America do not prioritize knowing the Bible. They don't. And you got to wonder why. And so George Barna said, well, why? And the number one reason is, well, it's just such a big book. I just don't have enough time to read it. And there's just so many weird things in it. And that's it. Well, it is a big book. There are 1,189 chapters and 66 books. So it's large. But fortunately, it's been broken into 66 books. So you don't have to look at it as one. Pick one. Okay? And it's been broken down into verses. It's been broken down for us to make it easier. But most people don't prioritize it because it's so large, or because it's got weird names, or it's got boring passages like Genesis chapter 5. And they use that, and they say, well, it's boring. I'd rather watch TV. I'd rather, be texting, whatever it happens to be. But listen, hear me out on this. If this is really God's communication to us, it should be the most important thing to us. These statistics should be flipped, shouldn't they? They should be completely flipped. But I want to prove to you today, out of Genesis chapter 5, that there is important and powerful information even in the boring chapters. I want to prove that to you so that you can put it in your heart that prioritizing learning the Bible is a really good plan. I want to show you that you can do that even in a boring passage. So let's take a look. Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of man. He made him in the likeness of man. Now, verse 2 says, he created them male and female and blessed them and called them mankind in the day that they were created. What? Did I say likeness of the wrong thing? Did I say man? Well, it says God here. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, but anyway, in the likeness of God. All right. Now, the first thing, now that you're laughing at me, okay, the first thing that I want to look at here is the word book. This is the book of the genealogy. Now, King James Version says this is the book of the generations. Now, what I find very interesting about that is the word book, because book is telling me that this was written down. Does that make sense? This is the book. Now, think about that for a second. There are plenty of scholars out there, critics of the Bible, that will tell you, oh, this was just oral traditions that were passed down for thousands of years before Moses, in about 2000 BC, wrote it all down. And it was all oral traditions. No, Moses is telling us this is the book. In other words, there was this written document that was passed down. It was written by who? Adam. And it was passed down all the way, and we've got it here, and so I have edited it right in. This is the book of the genealogy. Now, the word genealogy here, or generations, is in Hebrew, it's Toledoth. Toledoth means generations, origins, or account of men and their descendants. In other words, this is basically Adam's diary. Does that make sense? And what Adam did is he wrote down what God told him about how the world was made. He wrote down the story of the murder of his son. He wrote down these things. And then it was passed down generation to generation. And by the time it got to Moses in roughly 2000 BC, now that's an argument too. Some people think that Moses was around at about 1800 BC. Some of them have pushed it all the way back to 2600 BC. I'm more on the conservative side. I think he was closer to 2600. That's just my opinion. I've got all kinds of archaeological reasons for my opinion, but it doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. Now, the point is that Moses, when the new nation of Israel was being built, he went, well, we've got Adam's story and we've got Noah's story, so I'm going to take them from this family and that family, and I'm going to put it all in one place. So we call Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Bible, we call them the books of Moses, but they're really the editations. He edited them. Does that make sense? He took these other things and he put them all in there. And every time you see in Hebrew the word Toledoth, what that is it's basically Moses saying, all right, this is what Adam wrote down, and this is what Noah wrote down, and this is what Shem wrote down, and this is what, does that make sense? And this is basically the signature. That's the end. Now, you can see this in Genesis 9 different times. You can find it in Genesis 2:4. You can find it in Genesis 5:1. Genesis 6:9 says this is everything that Noah wrote down. Genesis 10:1 says his sons wrote this part. Genesis 11:10 says Shem, one of the sons of Noah, wrote this. Genesis 11:27 says Terah, Abraham's father, wrote all this part. Genesis 25:19 says this part was written by Isaac, Abraham's son. And chapter 37, verse 2 says this is the part that Jacob wrote down. And then at that point, it's all Moses from there. Does that make sense? So he edits it all together. Now, why is it so significant to key in on this? Because we just talked about how people don't fully trust the Bible. They've got them, they don't read them, and they certainly don't trust it. But this is telling you that these are eyewitness accounts of what happened a long time ago. We're not talking about myths. We're not talking about some story that was passed down in, some family somewhere and has been twisted by, 3,000 years of people changing it. No, these were eyewitness written accounts of what happened. In other words, what you are reading right here, listen to me, this is the oldest human communication ever written down anywhere. You're looking at something that is at least 6,000 years old. That's a long time. And it's an eyewitness account. Now, here's what's interesting about this. Unlike other religions, unlike other political philosophies or mysticism, Christianity, what we teach, is rooted in real history. Does that make sense? It's a reasonable belief. It's something that's verifiable. It demonstrates that the Bible really is trustworthy. 2 Peter 1:16 puts it like this. He says, we did not follow cunningly devised fables, myths. No. When we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were what? Say it with me. Eyewitnesses. That's powerful. You can trust this stuff. Now, I'm going to show you today how much you can trust it. But Josh McDowell, who's a great speaker when it comes to answers, giving answers. He's written some powerful books. One of them is called Evidence That Demands a Verdict. It's a must-have for people who study apologetics. Apologetics means to answer. One time, he was challenged by a professor in a debate. And the professor said, why should we believe the Bible over, say, Greek mythology? I mean, Greek mythology also has stories of miraculous events, like the Bible does. Greek mythology also has stories of resurrections, like the Bible does. Why should we trust the Bible over, the story of Poseidon or something like that? And Josh answered him, and he said, well, you know what, Professor, there's a really big difference between Greek mythology and the Bible, because Greek mythology may have some similar storylines, resurrections and miracles and things, but they're never applied to real flesh and blood individuals that you can identify in history. You cannot identify these people in history. You see, mythology always talks about non-historical, fictional characters, but Christianity always attaches itself to real events, to real people in real history. The Bible is loaded with things that you can go and find. You dig it up in the sand. Does that make sense? The Bible talks about a guy named Nebuchadnezzar that was a king. We can prove he was a real human being that really lived in Babylon and really was a king. Does that make sense? You can't do that with Greek mythology. You can't do that with the Book of Mormon. You can't do that with the Quran. But you can with God's Word. You can check it against history. Does that make sense? For example, for years and years and years, people said, the story of King David, which we're going to read later and when we get to Samuel, okay, the story of King David is about a mythical character. There never was a guy named David. Okay, within the last 25 years, we have proven beyond any reasonable doubt David was a real person in history. Does that make sense? The list goes on. And I will say, and I can prove, the Bible has never one time been shown to be in error when it comes to history. Did you know that? Not once. There is no other book on earth that can make that claim. Not even a history book, because they tend to get it wrong too. But the Bible, never been shown to be in error. What does that tell you? Somebody that's really smart is behind this. Does that make sense? So when it says, this is the generations of Adam, you can know, wow, this is really what Adam said. And this is something I can bank on. It's real history. I can check it. Now, something that is founded like this, that is so solid in history, it can be relevant in your life today. And there's an example right here. Take a look. Genesis 5:2. Now, this is going to kind of blow you away. It says, he created them, male and female, and blessed them, and called them mankind in the day they were created. Now, I just said that the Bible could be relevant for your life today, didn't I? Now, right here, you're going to see something that is relevant right into the 21st century. Because who was the one that came up with the name mankind? God did. It's God's idea. Now, there's this big controversy today, isn't there, over the word man or mankind. And there's this big, it's politically incorrect to call the entire human race mankind because that's sexist, right? That's male-dominated. That's evil. That's bad. We need to call them humankind or something like this, right? And you will see, in English, we write, if you're writing about an individual, you will say he or him. That's typical, isn't it? But now you have to use she, and then you have to flip it back and forth. You've got to be fair. But that controversy is silly because you see right here that it was God that called us mankind. And everybody goes, yeah, well, that shows that God is sexist. Well, no. Let's take a look at the word man. It comes from this word, Adam. It means man, red earth, red or dust. Now, think about this for a second. He is saying your name is dirt. Get it in your head. You're just dust. Oh, by the way, the word woman means from the man. That means you're from the dirt. That's it. God wanted to get it right into our heads. Listen, you are not a God. You're just dust. And I'm going to remind you of that by naming you dirt kind. Does that make sense? So right here we see something. Right here in verse 2, we see something that is relevant in the 21st century that answers a question that people are asking right now. Does that make sense? So there's nothing. Next time somebody gets upset about, you're calling them mankind, say, hey, look, here's what it means. And use it as an opportunity to go, it's just reminding you that no one gets out of this alive. You're just walking dirt. That's it. That's all you is. And you're going down. And unless you got Jesus in your life, that's all you got. Am I right or am I right? I mean, how many of you know that the kings of Egypt are just buckets of sand now? Dirt. That's all you are. That's all I am. And God wanted us to remember it, so he named us dirt kind. Now, you see how that's relevant to you today? And it's right in a book on genealogy, but it's there. See, that's the first key. The Bible is still relevant. It still teaches us, even from the earliest and the most boring chapters, and we simply need to listen to what it says. We need to get it in our heads. This book is really important. That was good preaching right there. Somebody say amen. I mean, you remember your dirt kind from now on. You just gotta get. We should get a bumper sticker. Dirt kind. Somebody's gonna get me a T-shirt. Okay, now go to Genesis 5, verse 3. Let's get into this. It says, and Adam. Now, by the way, I'm going to be using the Hebrew forms of these words, the names, and then I'll switch them back into English, which is a little more. But I just want you to hear how the Hebrew goes. It says, Adam, or Adam, lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Sheth, or Seth. It's Sheth in Hebrew. After he begot Seth, the days of Adam were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. That's a long time. 930 years. Now, most of us think, what's the point of this list of weird names of dead people that nobody really cares about? I mean, what's the point? But again, if this is God's communication, then everything here really does have a purpose and it really does have a meaning. Let's take a look at this. First of all, we know the word Adam means dust. The word Sheth, this word means appointed one. Now, we know that he was called appointed one because Eve said, hey, this new kid was appointed to take over because Cain killed Abel. Right? Does that make sense? Now, when you look at this, it says that Sheth, the appointed one, was begotten in Adam's likeness after Adam's image. Doesn't the Bible say that human beings were created in whose image? God's. Which human being was created in God's image? Adam was. And his wife Eve was taken from him. But from that day to this, we're in Adam's image, not God's. Now, what does that mean? When Adam was created in the image of God, he was created to reflect God's goodness. He was designed to do that. He was supposed to look like God. You were supposed to be able to look at Adam and go, wow, that's just how that's just how God acts, how God thinks. Boy, he looks just like his father, right? But when Adam went his own way and did his own thing and sinned, he is no longer reflecting God the way he was supposed to. And when he had a son, listen, he passed it down to him. So Seth, when he was born as a sinner. Now, I can prove that this is true because there's not a person in this room who does not understand the concept that when you were 2 years old, nobody had to teach you how to lie. Did they? Nobody had to teach you how to be sneaky. Nobody had to teach you how to be self-centered. Nobody had to teach you how to stab your brother with a pencil in homeschool this week. Somebody got a spanking big time this week. Cain and Abel, you know what I mean? I mean, in my house. Okay, because my children are in my image and I'm all the way back to Adam, who's a sinner. It's passed down to us. This, by the way, just from right here, right from this verse, we can see why it is that Jesus had to be born of a virgin. That's why it is so impossibly important, that teaching, that Jesus' mother never had a sexual relationship with a human male. Why? Because if she had, then Jesus would have been contaminated by the likeness of Adam. Sin. Does that make sense? That's powerful. We see it right here. Oh, wow, he's made in Adam's image. You see, the world says that all human beings are basically good. But the Bible is saying, no, all human beings are in the image of Adam. They're dust, they're dirt. They're not good. Only God is good. That's why. Now, the world will go viciously against what I just said, won't they? And they will say, oh, you're being negative. They'll come after you about it. Oh, no, people are basically good. No, they're not. No, they are not. Just leave human beings alone long enough, and before you know it, they'll be cannibals. Before you know it, they will be sacrificing human beings on altars and tearing their hearts out every day. The Aztecs and the Maya used to tear out human hearts, 1,000 people every single day. The conquistadors, when they came through, reported that blood would run in the streets this deep. That's what human beings will do left to themselves. When they are not allowed, when they are not shown this history, when they are not shown that we don't reflect God's goodness and we need to go after God, we need to seek Him with all of our hearts. When they don't learn that, human beings are not basically good, they're basically incredibly self-centered. And they will fall all the way down to those places. That is true today. We must be taught to live contrary to our natural bend, which is to say, I am the center of the universe. My feelings rule over everything and everyone. Whatever I want it now. Give it to me. We have to be taught against that from birth. That's what this is teaching. Let's go on from there. Genesis 5, verse 6. It says, Seth lived 105 years and begot Enosh, or Enosh. After he begot Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and had sons and daughters. I imagine he had a few. So all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Enosh lived 90 years and begot Kenan, or Canaan. After he begot Canaan, Enosh lived 815 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. Kenan lived 70 years and begot Mahalalel. Mahalalel, after he begot Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Kenan were 910 years, and he died. Mahalalel lived 65 years and begot Jared, or Jared. After he begot Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years. Say it with me. And he died. You seeing a pattern here? Jared lived 162 years and begot Enoch. Now, Enoch, you got to get the in there. Okay, Enoch. After he begot Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Jared were 962 years. Here it is. And he died. Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah, or Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. What are you seeing the pattern here? And he died. And he died. And he died. I don't care how long you live, you're going to die. That's what this is saying. It doesn't matter if you live 900 years or 90 minutes. You're going to die. And we got to get that in our heads. We're just what? Dust. Dirt. That's it. And God's trying to get it through our heads that, hey, look. Now, I've mentioned before, now some people look at this and go, 900 years, that's impossible. No, it's not. The world before the flood was radically different than it was after the flood. Before the flood, there was a gigantic water vapor canopy throughout the earth. We can prove that because we can look in the fossil record and we can see, dragonflies with, 4-foot wingspans. They could not fly today. Why? Because right now, where we're standing is roughly 14 pounds per square inch on your body. That's the pressure that our atmosphere pushes down on us. Now, prior to the flood, the water pressure or the air pressure was significantly higher because of that water vapor. Does that make sense? Which is why you could end up with dragonflies that big. Scary. I mean, you think you got a housefly problem now. Okay, but in those days, but you know what that would have done? It would have been like living in a hyperbaric chamber. Have you ever heard one of those? Now, those things, scientists have proven that hyperbaric chambers help you with health, don't they? They've proven it because it's higher atmospheric pressure, higher oxygen content. It's going to push it right into your pores, and it's going to make you healthier. Well, if you live that way 24/7, right, it's going to have an effect on you. Higher air pressure. You also got to think that these was 0 genetic defects to pass on. We're at the bottom of the river now. We're at New Orleans. We're not up at the source of the Mississippi River where it's nice and clear and pretty. We're down at the bottom now. We've been collecting junk for a long time. I know this because I couldn't officially join the Marine Corps because of a genetic problem in my back. I know this because I've got 2 wisdom teeth that are growing backwards at the bottom of my jaw, and the only way for them to get to them is to break my jaw, which is why they're still there. Okay? That's a genetic problem. Does that make sense? I've collected a few. Most of you understand this concept because you've got a few too. But back then, they didn't have any genetic problems. They also had incredibly wonderful food. It had just been created. All right? It didn't have any genetic problems either. So they lived significantly longer, and it's not scientifically impossible. Now, there's another thing we got to consider here. We don't really know how long a year was prior to the flood. Now, follow me on this. Today, we base the word 1 year off of the earth going around the sun one time, correct? 365 days, 4 hours, and 20 minutes, whatever it is. Now, but in those days, they may not have labeled a year that length of time. Why? Because today, we know the earth goes around the sun 1 year for one of 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is we now have telescopes and we can go and we can see, based on the stars, how we went around the earth, or how we went around the sun. We also base it off of our seasons. Right now, we're in the middle of summer. We all know it. We're not happy about it because it's Phoenix. Okay? We're looking forward to winter. But back then, there were no seasons. We can prove that too, can't we? Because you can find fossils of palm fronds in Antarctica. We know that prior to the flood, the whole earth was one uniform temperature. It was roughly what Hawaii is today, worldwide. So how do you measure a year when there's no changes? It's completely subjective, isn't it? It's, how many times does the sun, does the moon do a cycle? Why 12? Why not 7? Doesn't God like 7s? So maybe a year back then was actually 7 cycles of the moon. Could be. Does that make sense? I don't know. But the bottom line is, let's say it was 7, just for a second. Let's say, because there's 7 days in a week, that these numbers are actually based on years that were actually 7 months long. Well, in that case, Adam would have lived 542 years. Okay? That's still a very long time, any way you look at it. Now, let's take a look at death itself. Death is called apoptosis in scientific thinking. Now, what this is called cell death. Most people don't really know what death is. Isn't that funny? Scientists can't really tell you. They can't even really tell you what life is. I mean, because they got some definitions and sometimes they just don't work. But what is it? You know, we all know when someone's dead because they quit talking and walking and moving around. But what is it scientifically? Every single one of you in this room have cells in your body, roughly about 3 trillion. Some of them are already dead. And they're dying all the time, aren't they? Now, when you're young, they're quickly replaced. When you get older, they start being replaced less, which is why you end up with wrinkles. Because some of these cells do not regenerate or don't regenerate fast enough. Does that make sense? And eventually you get to a point where enough of your cells are dead that some major organ ceases to function and then the whole organism stops. That's what death is. But why does it happen? Scientists have been studying it for years. And they finally figured out that there are really 2 reasons that cells die. The first is, listen, this is going to blow you away. They're pre-programmed to die. It's right in their DNA when they're supposed to die. Does that make sense? It's right in there. It's right written into their DNA code. So what if that DNA code has changed over the centuries? We know DNA codes have changed over the centuries. That we can prove that. Does that make sense? So way back then, their cell death time was a lot longer than yours and mine. So they lived a very long time. The second reason is something scientifically called, let me get the word here, epigenetics. Now, what epigenetics is are chemical markers on your cells. Here's what they discovered. These chemical markers tell your cells, sometimes tell your cells when they're supposed to die. Not only do you have a genetic pre-program, but that pre-program sends out a hormone that attaches to those chemical markers. They're like addresses. It says, kill this cell now. Does that make sense? And they found out that if they turned them off, they were working on roundworms. And they found out that if they turn those cells off, that these creatures can live up to 30 or 40% longer than normal. That would be like you and I living to be 200, 250 years old, if they could figure out how to do it for us. Now, we're a little bit more complicated than a roundworm, okay? But the point that I'm trying to make here, whether it was less than 12 years or less than 12-month years, whatever, the point is, and he died. Whether you live a great length of time or not. And I also wanted to demonstrate that scientifically this is not impossible. You can trust the Bible. This is not nuts. This is possible, very possible. And it causes us to think, though. Doesn't matter how strong or weak you are. Doesn't matter how rich or poor. It doesn't matter how wise or stupid you are. In the end, you all die. You all die. Now, they lived a very long time. But listen, everything that these men built, everything they fought about, everything they worried about, everything they argued about, everything that was important to them is gone. It's gone. It's nothing. It's just, what is it? Dust. What are you named? Dust. God wants it to get you. We get our whole lives so wrapped up in buying that house. You're just dust. Why did Jesus say, why are you worried about this stuff? What you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear? You're just dust. Would you get it through your head? You need to have your mind wrapped around me because I'm the only thing that's eternal. And everything you work on, everything you worry about, your entire retirement funds, everything it's dust, it's worthless. Now let's take a look a little more about this. These names actually reflect this understanding. Let's take a look. The next one is Enosh. Enosh means mortal. Mortal, right? Or being frail or weak, mortal frailty. Kenan means possession, but it could also mean sorrow. It's not quite sure. Or it could mean your sorrows or your possessions just lead to sorrow. We're not really quite sure what that one means. Mahala'el means praise of God. In other words, I finally figured this out. I might as well just praise God. Does that make sense? Yerad means descend, or shall come down. Shall come down into the grave, that kind of a thing. That's kind of morbid to name your kid that. But anyway, Yanoch means dedicated or initiated. The etymology of this word means teacher or teaching. And Methushelach means his death shall bring. Can you imagine naming your kid his death shall bring? Let me introduce my kid to you. His name is Death. This one is his death shall bring. This one is going down into the grave. Let's have a family portrait. I mean, these guys, okay. But if you think about it for a second, these names are reminding them of this incredible truth that our days are numbered, and we easily forget that. And God wants us to remember this. This is why it says in Psalm chapter 90, verse 12, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days. This is the key. Listen, our true ambition in life is in living must be to focus on what is eternal. We've got to get our minds wrapped around this. Melissa and I were having a talk just last night about this very thing. And I was irritated. I don't mean to be mean, but I was irritated about a donation. Okay, let's just put it that way. I didn't really want to make this donation. Melissa did. And that's the truth. And we were having this discussion back and forth, and it was Melissa that said, what are you preaching on tomorrow? What are you worried about this stupid donation? It's just a donation. It's dust. And I went, I hate being, you remind me of the message. Okay, so, you know what I mean? Don't you love that? Wives, you're good at that. Yeah, that's right. So I gave the donation. So don't have to worry about it. Thank you, Becky. Now, going on from there, Genesis 5, verse 23. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Methuselah lived 187 years and begot Lamech. After he begot Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and had sons and daughters, and all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. He's the oldest human being that's ever lived, that we know of, was Methuselah, or Methuselah. Now, Enoch was this special case. It says that he had such a close relationship with God that he did not experience death. Now, this is a very interesting thing. We see this in several places in the Bible. Elijah also did not experience death. He was taken up into heaven and never actually physically died. And the Bible says that if you put your trust in Jesus Christ, the day is coming when he will return, and some of us who are still here, we also will not experience death. We will simply be translated up to be with him. Enoch was the first that experienced this. Now, there are some people that speculate, Enoch was, super guy, he was super special, or he was ultimate and godly. I don't think so. I think God simply took him because he wanted to. I mean, it's not like God's a tame lion. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. Are you with me? And the truth of the matter is, there have been plenty of very godly people throughout history. Enoch just happened to be one that God said, I'm taking you up with me, just like he did with Elijah. I don't think he was any more godly or any less godly than anybody else. Does that make sense? I think it simply is. God simply took him because he wanted to. But here's the key. It says he walked with God. In other words, he understood and got his focus on what was eternal. To walk means to live it out. In other words, what does it mean to walk with God? It means we put God first in our lives. First. It means we act as if we are always under his eye. There are too many people that think that they can do things in hiding. How many of you know you're always exposed to him? Wherever you are, even in the shower, you are always exposed to the Lord. He always has his eye on you. And if you live a life going, God is watching. There are so many people who get caught with a quote-unquote hidden camera. You should have in your mind, there's always a hidden camera on me. And you'll never get caught by a physical hidden camera because you've lived your whole life thinking, I better not do that because God is watching. That's what it means to walk with God. God's word is the rule of your life. That's what it means to walk with God. It means you try to do everything in your life to please God and nothing to offend Him. It means that you make your will bend to His will. It means that you are a worker of good with Him. It means you follow Him like a child follows a parent. That's what it means to walk with God, and that's what Enoch did. Philippians 1:21 says it this way: I expect and hope that I will not fail Christ in anything, but that I will have the courage now, as always, to show the greatness of Christ in my life here on earth, whether I live or die. To me, the only important thing about living is Christ. What's his focus? On what's eternal. And dying would simply be a profit for me. King James says, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. That's how this is translated. That's what Enoch did. He learned to walk with God. Let's go back to Genesis 5:28 again. It says, Lamech lived 182 years, had a son, called his name Noah, saying, this one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. After he begot Noah, Lamech lived 595 years, had sons and daughters. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, Lamech means powerful, or a conqueror, or the word despairing. It could mean any one of those things. Noah means rest or comfort or resting place. Now, we all remember that Noah's flood is coming up in chapter 6, right? Because we heard about Noah and the ark and all that, and we know that's coming. But if you go back to Enoch, Enoch was a very godly man, and his name meant teacher. And it says in Jude chapter 14 in the New Testament that Enoch was a prophet. He warned people. He proclaimed a warning to people. This is why Enoch named his son Methuselah, which means his death shall bring. Methuselah died in what year? The year the flood began. In other words, his death will bring the flood. Enoch was a prophet. He was warning. And that truth is right there. It's right there in the words. That's right there. And the point is, we can trust God's word. His truth is there. Right there, right here in a genealogy. It warns people. God's word warns us that we need to turn our lives over to Him and be eternally focused. That we need to ask Him to forgive us so that we're in line with Him, because we're just dust. The Bible warns us, don't get your life wrapped around temporary things like your house and your retirement and all of that nonsense. Get your focus on what's eternal. How are you investing who you are, what you do, what you say, and what you think? How are you investing that in something for me that's going to outlast you, Mr. Dust? Does that make sense? That's what the Bible is warning us for. Now listen to this. This should give you goosebumps, because it did to me. We can trust that God's word is communicated to us. Take a look again. Let's go through these names. Adam, it means man or dust. Sheth means appointed one. Enosh means mortal. Kenan means possession or sorrow. Mahalalel means blessed God. Yerad means shall come down. Yanosh means teacher or teaching. Methuselah means his death shall bring. Lamech means powerful or despairing. Noah means comfort. Now look carefully. Let's put it all together. Man is appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God shall come down teaching that his death shall bring the despairing to a resting place. Did you see that? Let's go through it again. Look at the names. Adam, man. Sheth, man is appointed. Enosh, mortal. Man is appointed mortal what? Kenan, sorrow. Or man is appointed to possess sorrow. Does that make sense? Mahalalel. But the blessed God, Yerad, shall come down. Enoch, teaching. Methuselah, that his death shall bring. Lamech, the despairing. Noah, comfort. Now wait a second. Those 10 names just summed up the entire Bible. Those 10 names just summed up the whole Bible. Do you think that's a coincidence? Accident? Amazing? I would say. Now, some people say, oh, they wrote that in there. Well, wait a second. Do you think that the Jewish rabbis would write about a teacher who would say that his death is going to bring them to heaven? Do you think they were a little bit opposed to Jesus? Say yes. So they're not going to put this in there. And we know, because we have the Septuagint, we know that these Hebrew names were in that text at least 250 years before Jesus was even thought of. 250 years minimum. 250 BC is when the Septuagint was translated into Greek. We know these names are real. In other words, what I just said is real. God is so into the details that he had people name kids in such a way that it would lay out the entire gospel of Jesus Christ 7,000 years before Jesus was born. If that doesn't make you say, wow, you're missing something. You're missing something. God's word speaks to us even in a genealogy. Is that book boring anymore? Some people are, oh, it's boring. I don't think that's boring. I think that's cool. I think that's a wow moment. And that's the key. Here it is. Look. Let's decide today. Listen to me on this. Let's decide today to make studying, knowing, and acting on God's word our priority in life. Why? Because we can see how much we can trust it. We can see all the way back to a genealogy how much we can trust God's word. How much he cares. It says, I'm going to come down teaching that my death will bring you comfort. I'm going to put that right into the names of people. Because I love you. Because I care. And I want you to have that comfort. I want you to see that all the way back to Genesis, I was thinking about taking care of you. So let's decide to not be in that 80% of people who have a Bible and never crack the cover. Let's get past this, well, you know, the pastor will teach me on Sunday. No. Look, I'll teach you. But you need to be in this book every single day. Because there's a code in here. And I just showed it to you, didn't I? This is coded communication from God to you because we live in enemy territory, don't we? This is a secret message sent by our King to give us comfort. Say, I've got the answers. I've got the answers for you. Let me get that band up here so we can play. Now listen to me. In 2012, Christianity Today did another study. It said the time the average American spends on religious or spiritual activities. That's the average American. Not Christians, but average. That would include everybody, right? Doesn't matter what your spiritual persuasion is. The average amount of time they spend on spiritual activities is 9 minutes. 9 minutes. Now that average includes people who spend no time at all. So average, we spend 9 minutes. You know how much we spend watching TV? Do you think it's more than 9 minutes? Do you know how much time we spend texting? How much time we spend on the phone? How much time we spend at work? How much time we spend contemplating our navel thinking about nothing? And God has given you this book. 1,189 chapters is going to keep you busy for a while. He said, I've given you enough so that you won't get bored. I've given you enough that you can keep studying this for a lifetime and still come up with new stuff. I have given you a coded communication, and I just put you in a church where a pastor showed you something that probably gave you goosebumps right in the names of the people that lived 7,000 years ago. And I gave it to you so that this would become your priority. Now, there are two groups of people listening to what I have to say. One group of people are Christians. They've been Christians for a while, and I am hoping that this message went, oh man, I need to be in the Word. I really need to be more in the Word. There's another group of people here. You call yourself a Christian, But you can't remember the last time you actually sat down and read this book. I've gone to plenty of churches, and I've been an outside speaker. And when I say, how many people, show of hands, without lying, come on, don't lie. How many of you have actually read all 1,189 chapters, every single word? 2 people, 3, 4. That's it. Small group, isn't that right? What should it be? Every person. Now, let me give you the trick. If you read 3 chapters in the Old Testament and 1 chapter in the New Testament, it'll take you about 10 minutes. Which one is that average? That 9-minute average? If you do that every single day, you will read every single chapter in 10 months and 2 weeks. 10 and a half months. 1 year. Is it worth your time? 9 minutes a day? There's another group of people here, though, that are not Christians at all. You've never given your life to Jesus Christ. I just showed you that God himself said, I will come down teaching that my death will bring you to a place of comfort. If you are living a life that is pointless and empty and you darn well know it, Jesus is the answer. And here's what you got to do. You simply got to go to God in prayer and say, all right, I get it. I'm just dust. I heard that. I'm dirt. I'm mud on your shoes, and I know it. But you said that if I gave my life to you, you would forgive me of my sins and give me all the comfort that I need in life, all the direction, all the hope. It's a simple prayer. Now, if you need to make that prayer today, Doug and Carrie will be right over here to talk with you. If you are a Christian and you need to get down on your knees and say, God, I'm sorry, I have not prioritized your word, and I just saw that it's cool, right down to the genealogies. The boring chapters are not as boring as I thought. Well, maybe you need to make a step of faith today. Maybe you need to get out of your chair and go over there, pray with these two, because they're prayer people. You'll like them. They pray really good. Now, you go over there and talk to them and say, I want to make a new commitment that I'm going to get back into the Word. They'll pray with you. We're going to sing a song right now, but let's pray first, and then during our song, if you want to go over there and pray, I challenge you to do that. Let's pray. Father God, I come before you in Jesus' name, and I ask you, Lord, to speak into the hearts of people, to really show them, emotionally speaking, what we just learned. Really show them that your word can be trusted and that it should be the priority of our life. And I pray that during this song that you literally draw people right out of their chairs to go make a commitment that they're going to get into your word. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Why don't you stand up?